Welcome, everyone, to the Chiefs pregame cheat sheet. Darren Smith along with Steve Walls, and we are here live from Arrowhead Stadium, of course, as some people like to call it, G.E.H.A Stadium. And, of course, tonight, Monday night game, Steve, it features the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. Big matchup, big division matchup. The Raiders won their first game last week. The Chiefs, of course, won a big game last Sunday night against Tampa Bay, 41-31. Your initial thoughts on tonight's matchup, big division rivalry. Chiefs lead 68-53-2 in the all-time series against this team.
Well, like you said, it's a primetime game. Chiefs have been doing well in those primetime games where, as you know, before they kind of come out and lay an egg. So I like to think that going forward, they're the primetime Chiefs. But I think Arrowhead Stadium or G.E.H.A Field at Arrowhead Stadium is going to be electric tonight.
One of the things that I was asked earlier today, and we can kind of chime on and jump right into it, is whether or not the Chiefs are overlooking this game, knowing that you got Buffalo coming ahead next Sunday. Now, as I told the people, I said, well, first of all, I don't think so. They learned their lesson, and not to say that they look past Indianapolis, but they may not have taken them as seriously with all the mistakes that they ended up making in that particular game. Your thoughts on whether or not they would look past this particular team, Vegas, going into Buffalo next Sunday?
No, in a couple of reasons. It's hard to look past a rival, right? Like, you know you're going to get over this game. Exactly, no matter what. And the other thing is they still remember a couple years back when the Raiders had the victory here and took the victory lap
around. That was COVID year.
Yeah, the COVID year. They took the victory lap, shout out to Nipsey, around the stadium. So that being said, I think, that still lingers in the back of their mind. Like, hey, we were disrespected on our field, and it's not going to happen again.
Looking at tonight's matchup, Kansas City 4-1. I'm sorry, they're 3-1. Of course, you have Las Vegas, who are 1-3 on the season. Andy Reid has a really good record against the Raiders. He's 16-5 all time.
Means he owns the Raiders.
I would tend to agree with that. What are some of your keys in tonight's matchup if you're Kansas City? Coming off you came off a big win last week. You ran 37 times. You threw the ball 23 times. Got 181 yards on the ground. And I tell people, there's no harm in having a good balance. Yeah. They put up 41 points. I tell people, I know we love Patrick Mahomes in that arm, but if you give him a complimentary running game that keeps him healthy, that keeps him, from seeing a lot of dirt, and you can put points on the board like they did last week.
I think the biggest key right now is the offensive line. There's, as we got the report that just came out, no Trey Smith, so Nick Allegretti is going to be sliding into that spot. Yeah, Nick is a guy. I'm not really worried about it, but Nick is a guy that you can put in any spot on the offensive line and he'll do well. But I think when you look at how they've played, with the running game these past few weeks, Trey Smith has played with a hurt foot.
Oh, yeah. We've seen him limping bad and stuff. And the fact that he was able to have that type of performance last week against Tampa Bay says a whole lot about him and this intestinal fortitude. Hopefully, this will just be for one game and he'll be back next Sunday because they're going to need him against the Buffalo Bills.
Of course, but then you think about the running game, right? Like, how will it affect the running game with a new guy in there? I mean, Nick is a veteran. He's a veteran, so he's not, you're not throwing a young guy into the fire, so to speak. It's going to be different seeing Nick out there. Hopefully, he's able to match the intensity that Trey plays with each and every week. And, that's been a big thing as we talk about intensity with this offensive line. Last year, they came out, and as you would say, they weren't looking for, violence, right? So we haven't seen that quite yet this year. And I don't know if it's, because they kind of went away from the run game early on, or is it just most of the guys are playing injured?
I think in that loss to Indianapolis, I think that's why they focus so much on the run game against Tampa Bay, because they kind of had to go back because of the fact that they kind of looked past, and I don't want to say they looked past, but just maybe they just didn't take Indianapolis seriously based on their record.
Oh, they didn't.
So they got hit in the mouth. They got kind of challenged. So I think if somebody like Eric Bieniemy, he's going to look at that as a challenge and challenge the player, especially the offensive line, because it always starts up front. Starts on the offensive line, defensive line, and they just got beat at the line of scrimmage. And so what you want to do, especially Shaq Barrett had a lot to do with his comments last week. What are you going to meet that challenge, and what are you going to do? I think that they met the challenge, and obviously they met it with force, running 480 yards. But they also saw, like I asked Patrick, about it being balanced. Again, he didn't have a problem with it because, we saw how effective it is. And the thing is, even though his numbers aren't gaudy as it once was last year, 4,800 and for 5,000 yards, it's leading to wins. Everybody's is being productive, and I mean, look at the scores.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and it's kind of one of those things. It's the gift and the curse. You're not going to have the splash plays, the 2-play offensive drives and leading to a touchdown. You're going to have those ones where you have to be gritty, get your feet, get your boots dirty a little bit, and go down and actually play a football game where it's not going to be as easy as before. And I think they knew that coming into this season, especially in the onset of guys trying to get acclimated to this offense. So when you think about when you think about just the this Chiefs offense as a whole, I really believe that these guys are going to be able to go out there and do what they need to do, especially from the offensive side, because you have a guy like Juju who's coming in looking to be a number one. You have a guy like MBS who's coming in looking to be a number one. And we talk about these guys having something to prove. So with the ball being spread around, I guess that'd be my question to you: is it causing somewhat of an issue? Like we asked Patrick earlier this week about Mecole Hardman not getting the ball, and Patrick's answer was, well yeah, and his answer was that Mecole has been injured a little bit. He's battling an injury. Well, if he's playing, we both have said if they're playing, they're out there, then they should be able to be full speed
and be productive.
So that shouldn't be even a comment from Patrick, saying that, oh, well, Mecole has been battling the injury a little bit. No, it's going to be your job to get Mecole the ball.
So to answer your question about whether the production part, I'm still wondering about that. Look, I've asked the players, and yes, but as long as they're winning, it's kind of hard to kind of go against the grain. But again, they're not used to being a number one receiver anyway. I know Juju was for I think maybe a year or two with Pittsburgh after they separated from Antonio Brown. So during that time, he was a number one, but we saw his production drop during that time period.
It's kind of weird because you had guys like, when Tyreek went down in Jacksonville, was that 2 years ago? The Super Bowl year.
3 years.
3 years ago. You saw guys step up.
I think the next game was McCarthy. The next game after that was
Robinson against the Raiders. He had 110, 112 yards.
Yeah, 2 touchdowns. 2 or 3. So I mean, it's what I tell people is that when your number is called, when Patrick throws you the ball, all you got to do is produce. Like if you execute, if you catch the ball, if you extend the chains, if you get into the end zone, he will come back to you.
Faster than MBS?
Who?
Demarcus Robinson.
I don't think so. No.
I mean, because you look at those routes, and Patrick's MBS.
Yeah, but I mean, but first of all, MVS runs a 4.3, so I don't.
I can't remember what Demarcus ran.
It wasn't no 4.3, but for MVS, look, that's something that we've been talking about because it seems like a lot of times he's forcing the ball, or at least he's trying to force the ball to MVS, and I asked him about it as well. It's just like their timing is off, and I'm not sure as to why that is. I mean, I don't know if it's because he's probably the tallest receiver that Patrick has worked with since he's been in Kansas City. He's about 6'3", 6'4", so he's
Marcus Robinson too. He's tall.
He didn't look like he was that tall.
He's 6'3".
But be that as it may,
Jody Fortson, his first year as a receiver.
So he's 6'6", and Travis to an extent, 6'6". So no, I get that. So I'm not sure as to why Patrick and MVS are having problems connecting. But maybe Patrick needs to hit him in stride and just instead of just trying to throw it out there and have him run underneath it. Maybe if you can catch him in stride and let him try to break off something, that might be the key.
And a lot of those routes, there's a reason why the meme was out there. F it, Tyreek down there somewhere. A lot of those people don't really understand that Patrick threw the ball up and made Tyreek go get it. Like you knew he was going to go, and at least if all else fails, you were going to
but he's had that problem with Mecole as well. Now I know obviously Mecole's been a little bit injured, but before he got injured, he was still overthrown. I think the only one he technically hasn't overthrown was Justin Watson. And he caught him in stride. So again, I just don't know, but it comes to be an issue where Patrick just needs to be more accurate.
And his trust too. His trust is like, all right, if I'm throwing you a jump ball, are you gonna go get it, or are you gonna add to my interception total?
But again, is he accurate in those
Yeah.
throws? Because
I
again,
mean, the thing
I'm
about
saying,
it, you don't
but
even
we've
have to be
seen.
accurate though. Is if I'm throwing the ball up to you and I know that you can go get it no matter who the defender
Yeah.
is, I'm gonna throw it up.
No, I get that. I get that. Also, of course, looking at tonight's game with the Raiders, one of the things that let's talk about, Steve, is the acquisition that the Raiders did in the offseason
Mm-hmm.
during the summer, and they acquired the best wide receiver in the game. Well, at least one of the two,
Arguably,
arguably, yeah. But between he and Cooper Kupp, because
yeah,
I got to respect that.
of course.
Got to respect him, and to an extent Tyreek Hill. But they got Devontae Adams. He's been All Pro receiver the last 2-3 seasons. He's helped Aaron Rodgers get the MVP of the league his last 2 years in Green Bay. Do you feel like he has been a great addition to the Raiders and what they're looking for, albeit with the 1-3 record?
Well, I think the Raiders were expecting a little more, from not on the Devontae Adams side, but more on the Derek Carr side. Because they were expecting the college connection.
Yeah.
And I don't think
Well,
they've
they had it in game one.
Yeah, they
But
did.
then, as we saw in game two, was like against Arizona, he went away from him. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, because you see, no matter what, they got Allen Robinson in Los Angeles, and Cooper Kupp is getting 14, 15, 18 targets.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, you might want to spread the ball around, but if that's your go-to guy, you got to feed the beast.
And not only that, they have it's very similar to what Kansas City had when they had Tyreek. They have the Darren Waller, who is, arguably one of the best tight ends in the league. Has the speed, has the size, and the skill set. With a top wide receiver, so you have that connection. And a quarterback, a lot of people don't give Derek Carr the recognition, I guess, that he deserves with the deep ball. I think he has one of the best deep balls in the league, if you ask me. So with that being said, it's kind of mind-boggling that they haven't been able to be, as successful as they had planned to be, early on in the season.
Question for you, because I thought about actually I was thinking about you today when I was placing my bets, because you always say that Derek Carr seems to have a great outing when he plays Kansas City. And I don't know if it's more here at Arrowhead or just the Chiefs in general.
Anywhere you can play at South Beach, he's gonna ball out.
And so and I didn't do any Derek because I keep thinking that just when I decide I'm gonna go in that direction, he'll let me down. So I stayed away from him in my parlay tonight. But Derek Carr, what do you expect? Because if we go off of what the history is, Kansas City's won the last 3 games against the Raiders. They just won their first game last week, and based off of what Kansas City did last week against Tom Brady, who had his full array of weapons, and Julio Jones, Chris Godwin, Leonard Fournette, along with Mike Evans. What are you looking to see tonight with this Chiefs defense going up against this Raiders offense?
It's going to be interesting. We talked about the kind of trouble, I guess, that Derek Carr has had, getting Devontae Adams the ball.
Yeah.
It's going to be who has the task of guarding Devontae Adams. Is it going to be L'Jarius Sneed? Is it going to be a mixture of a couple guys? Because if you look over these past, I would say, even looking at last season, these Chiefs defenders have had a little trouble. Not even a little, a lot of trouble guarding top tier wide receivers.
I don't have it in front of me, but I'm curious. I'm curious. When the Chiefs took on the Cowboys last year, what Devontae Adams' stats were? Now, granted, I think Derek Carr is a little bit better quarterback than Dak Prescott, and the fact that
You mean Aaron Rodgers? Devontae Adams.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know what made me think about. Yeah, well, he didn't play that game last year, so of course he had Jordan Wilson. So I guess I have to kind of throw that out because I can't remember. Maybe been legit. I'm not sure who would have been guarding him, but be that as it may,
Travaris Ward.
Okay, it would have been Travaris Ward, but I can't remember what the stats were in that game for. I know it wasn't good because Jordan Love didn't have a good game, but I'm just wondering whether or not this type of quarterback, Derek Carr, will make a difference in getting, because look, if you're going to win a game, you're going to have to do either one of the two things. You have to run Josh Jacobs like he did last week for 144 yards and keep Kansas City's offense on the sidelines as long as possible. And or you're going to have to feed Devontae Adams. Now, I hope they do for at least 8 catches, 72 yards and a touchdown. But but be that as it may, I mean, how do you see the Raiders, if they're going to beat Kansas City, do so?
I think it's going to have to be. This could be possibly. Like I said, if the Chiefs are having trouble guarding the top tier wide receiver, we saw it with Mike Evans, we saw it with Mike Williams, with Chargers. And even going into last game of the season, we saw it, or early on in the season with Jamar Chase, guard Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs. All those top tier wide receivers always get off versus the Chiefs. So that being said, I really believe that you're going to have to be able to stop Devontae Adams, or it's going to be a long ball game. It's not going to matter about what they're able to do with the run game if they're able to be successful with pass.
Want to move, and we will get back to the offense for the Chiefs just a little bit, but I do want to move a little bit over to the defensive side of football. You asked this week, and it was a good catch by you. Willie Gay.
Mm-hmm.
He's back in the building now after he's suspended for 2 more games. So he returned after the Buffalo game. That'll be the game when we go to San Francisco. You got a chance to ask Andy Reid about about his mindset, because we know last year he was suffering from a little depression and stuff like that. We saw how well they did. Well, we saw how bad they did against Indianapolis, and then how they turned it around against Colts.
Yeah.
Are they going to be missing, or do you still expect the same production from our defense, especially at the linebacking core against this Raiders offense? Because, again, they do have Hunter Renfrow, they do have Darren Waller, as you mentioned. I mean, you got Josh Jacobs. To me, I think the matchup to watch tonight, Nick Bolton against Josh Jacobs. But let me know what you think.
I think having Willie Gay back in the building helps tremendously. I mean, you have more eyes to be able to give, instead of just being on a Zoom call or however they've been doing a phone call or whatever. He's going to be able to see, all right, not being out there, seeing what we all see either on a TV screen or wherever he was watching the game at. So he's going to be able to give them that outside look on what he sees.
Yeah.
And so not only that, these other guys are still young. They're young linebacking core. So I think that is going to be key. But then you have Nick Bolton, who's been playing very well.
Yeah.
At the linebacker, he has the green dot, so he's kind of managing the defense, so to speak, giving all the calls. And that's a huge task for a guy only in his second year. But he stepped up to the plate, I believe. And, not only that, you have a mixture of guys. I mean, you have Elijah Lee, who is a veteran, linebacker, Leo Chenal, who is coming in. Still, I think he's having a little trouble in pass coverage. We talk about guarding Darren Waller. If they throw Josh Jacobs out in the flat, what are they going to do regarding that? So it's going to be a tough matchup. This is one of the early on, I think this is the best, linebacker or not linebacker, best wide receiver tight end matchup that we've seen, because you got to Tampa Bay with no Gronk. That
I would agree with that.
That they've seen so far. So
I'm curious. Of course, we are here live at Arrowhead Stadium. We're inside the press box. Darren Smith, Steve Walsh with the pregame cheat sheet. Look, we appreciate you joining us on our social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. We definitely thank you for taking the time out to watch us tonight, supporting us all season long. We'll be back here next week, of course, getting ready for the big game. Look, and we'll just jump to that for a second, but I was telling one of my guys today that next Sunday is going to be like, if you're a football purist, actually next weekend in general, you think about Saturday, you got Alabama and you've got Tennessee. Mm-hmm. If they don't get Bryce Young back, I'm putting money on Tennessee, at least because they're 5.5 or 7.5 point underdog. Yeah. So I'm putting money there. But next Sunday, I don't even know who plays in the 12 o'clock game. I know we'll get here early, get ready for our pregame show. But you got Chiefs and Bills. I saw the build up. On KCTV5 yesterday, where they were talking about the greatest gameplay. I'm like, hold on now, slow down now, because Steve and I, we were in Los Angeles for that. Look, Buffalo's good.
I think where they're going, the ending was a little different. Because it was.
Yeah, because the Chiefs won. Yeah. Had the Chiefs won that game, it might have been. But be that as it may. But then you follow that game up, you got Dallas and the Eagles. I think that's going to be a tremendous game as well. And so we won't get on too well at the halftime on that game. But be as it may, I think if you're a football purist like we are, next week is going to be exciting. So make sure you join us for that as well. But going back to tonight's game, Steve, on the offensive side of football for the Chiefs. Because they had, I can't remember. I know they won the time of possession in that ball game, but of course they were able to get the early lead because they actually had some luck come their way that went against them against Indianapolis when their first possession they muffed the
Yeah,
punt
sure.
and they led to a score. Well, Tampa Bay muffed the kickoff to start the game off. Kansas City circled back around and got a
Yeah.
touchdown off of that. Let's presume that everything just goes according to plan, whether or not the Chiefs have to kick off or receive. What are you looking for them to do on offense? Are they going to stick with and try to establish a run, or do they, a general mix? But do you see them trying to establish a run, or do you just see, hey, we're going to get it where we get it on this opening drive, whatever we have scripted, so we can get into the end zone?
I think it's going to be kind of similar to what we saw. And I know even asking Patrick, is this Raiders team, as bad as their record, or are they better than what their record shows? And he said on film, they're better than what their record shows. I mean,
Yeah.
you have a guy like Chandler Jones, defensive end. You have another guy, Max Crosby, defensive end for the Raiders, that they can get after the quarterback. I mean, they're itching to get after the quarterback, and it's kind of similar. I think they're going to probably play a little bit similar to what we saw when they played the Chargers. With Patrick is hopefully not flustered. Hopefully, he's able to step up. Be patient. And that being said, talking about the patience part of it, that's another reason why we haven't seen the spark plays that we've seen a lot of from Patrick Mahomes. I mean, we saw it a little bit. We saw it when he threw he escaped the defensive end last week.
Yeah.
And threw the little jump shot pass he said to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So the last few seasons, we've seen a lot of that from Patrick, and we just haven't seen a lot. So I think to win this game today, you're going to have to see more of that from Patrick, and even going forward in the rest of the season.
Look, you mentioned Chandler Jones, but also they do have Max Crosby. Crosby has been balling out lately, and look, they have a safety that I've liked since his rookie year. He's been off and on injured. Jonathan Abram.
Yeah.
I think he can bring it, but also got Denzel Perryman as well. So I mean, the Raiders.
Funny you mentioned him. He hasn't been, and we talked about, kind of his dirty hits, so to speak. He hasn't been that, from what I've seen this past this season. He hasn't really had that been that same player.
Yeah.
Is he nursing something?
I don't think.
He brought the aggression.
You gotta remember, they didn't pick up his fifth. They didn't pick up none of those draft picks. They didn't pick up none of their fifth-year options, and so that's something it could be waiting back and looking right now. You're playing for your next contract, whether you get it here or somewhere else. You got to
make those. We've seen it from Tyron.
Yeah, I get it, but and also though to that point, he's got to put something good on film. If he's not putting hits out there or stopping plays, especially at his position, and it's not going to be a good sign.
And people, when you're losing, it kind of changes up how folks play, especially on a contract year.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, am I going to go out there and make that touchdown save and hit, or am I just going to kind of arm tackle it?
Yeah, but man, that business decision is something else because it can work against you too. I mean, we saw how it worked. Tyron, he was, he thought he was going to get.
I think as long as you do just enough, and what these guys do. I mean, you look at
and it also has to translate to victories as well.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. And like I said, even though Tyron didn't get one here, he still parlayed that into a nice contract down in New Orleans, which is home for him more or less. Look, we've got so much to discuss. I want to ask you about the offense. Eric Bieniemy last week called a great game. Looking at it, Isaiah Pacheco. I think we talked to him. He had 11 attempts and like 66 yards. And I asked him, I said, man, because you asked or you mentioned about how last year we talked about the offensive line choosing violence. We were in Tampa and looking through that's how it looked like Isaiah was running. And I asked him about that. He just that is how he runs. He runs angry. Now, I don't know if he's angry because he was a 7th round draft pick and he's trying to prove something, which use that as a reason and let that play yourself out. But when you see someone like him, obviously Clyde Edwards-Helaire scoring 2 touchdowns, I think he may have had over 100 yards of total offense or at least yards from scrimmage last week. What are you expecting from this running back group? Obviously, Ronald Jones isn't going to be playing again tonight. He's inactive. Jerick McKinnon should be able to get some touches. What are you expecting from our running backs?
I think they moved Isaiah Pacheco up in the depth chart. I really do. I mean, he's the carries that he's been getting. He, to me, and I've been talking to him pretty much after every game.
Yeah.
And even after the first game, you can just tell he comes in with a different confidence level than most rookies do. I
He
mean,
doesn't have a chip on his shoulder, but
yeah,
but he
you can
is.
just tell.
But one of the things that I've always said, and we talked about it during training camp and stuff, is that the Chiefs have done such a great job mixing these rookies in with the veterans. I mean, he had 10 of them, 9 of them made the
Hmm.
team. So I really think that it helps them. It helps someone like Pacheco to where when you're getting in first game in Chicago, and then the other preseason games where you're getting in the game, getting some live action with the first team, and you're somewhat you're
Hmm.
successful. You're scoring a touchdown. You're helping move the chains and stuff like that. I think it builds confidence. So when it comes time for the regular season
Yeah.
and your numbers call,
But
you're
still,
good to go.
you got to remember though, this isn't a team where they're trying to find their way. This is a team that's already been established.
Yeah.
That's a Super Bowl caliber team. And when guys come, young guys come into a team like this, it's an eye opener for them. Like, all right, I got to find out how to be a champion or how to
Yeah.
be a veteran. And I think we talked about confidence level. With his confidence level, he's come in with that swag as a veteran. Like he's and even in locker room, he's commanding. When he does interviews, he doesn't like shy away from any of that. And I don't know if I mean he was a running back at Rutgers. I don't know if he's had that just that media training. And there's some guys are just born with it. So
So let me ask you this though: when you look at, hey, AK, when you look at what some of these players are able to bring, and you look, I mean, talking about Isaiah of all people,
mhm,
um, I do believe that again, them having a chance to play early on. Again, when their numbers call, because we look at the wide receivers. I mean, Sky Moore really hasn't had the opportunities, but Isaiah's been one that when his numbers called, he's out there producing,
of
and
course.
and I still.
And real quick, it takes me back to even when I was thinking about when someone asked him a question about wanting to wear the number 10. You know,
Yeah.
he's like, man, hey, I've been wearing 10. That's my number. Yeah, I don't care who wore it before me. I'm gonna make my own name. So even that just goes to show you, it's like I'm not shying away from nothing. I wear 10. Yeah, I mean, it's only gonna make me better anyway. So it just his decision to even try to fill those shoes of a guy that wore 10.
Patrick Mahomes. I mean, obviously he's had great games. He's 5-1 all time on Monday Night Football. Of course, the one loss was the 54-51 game against Los Angeles at the Coliseum that you and I were at back in 2018. What are we expecting from him in tonight's matchup?
I think he's gonna try to come out here and light this thing on fire. I really do. It's we talk about it being a primetime game one,
Raiders too.
Raiders number two, and then just the disrespect that he's still gets. I mean, is he a number one caliber? Is he two
Is he
or
able to
three?
elevate the talent around him?
Yeah, so
Which he's shown he
I mean,
can.
it's subtle, but we still see that he feels the disrespect and he hears everything. So I think from his standpoint, he's going to come out here and try to set this thing on fire. And being at home and they haven't played here in 3 weeks.
I was going to say the biggest thing is one, you don't want to lose. I mean, you want to take advantage of all the home games. Now, our good friend Todd Lebo mentioned on the radio this morning that the Chiefs, he expects to blow them out. I hope that. Now, I know you're not a betting man anymore, because I know I know you do your fantasy. Okay. But I was telling you, I said, and I was telling Serena, the thing I can't do, I can't bet the Chiefs. Now, I got the Chiefs winning big,
Yeah.
but I still can't bet on them to win to cover the point spread because it's like just when I do. 7.5, depending on when you got it. It may have been 6.5. But again, initially I was going to take it, but I'm like, man, because they got me 2 years ago when the Raiders won here, and they did the bus trip leading up to that game in Las Vegas. They were, yeah, we remember that.
Yeah.
So I'm in Vegas. I'm thinking, okay, man, y'all talking big stuff.
Yeah.
Point spread was 8. I had the over and I had 8. Laid $1,000 on it. Suckers one by one. I mean by 4. I looked at Pastor Patrick. You really could cover the point spread. You really could win by 8 points today. So I was like, ever since then, I'm like, I can't bet on Kansas City to cover the spread. Even though they might not expect them to win and win handily, I'm just not doing it anymore. But looking at tonight's game, I mean, Travis Kelce, he set some records last week. I know you got a chance to ask him about it. What are your thoughts about this wide receiver group? I know we talked a little bit about Juju, and actually we haven't mentioned Juju at all, but tight end university last week, all 3 tight ends scored for Kansas City. If somebody would have had $1,000 parlay on that thing, Oh man, they wouldn't be. I know I wouldn't be here right now if that was in high
Yeah,
school.
you
Be,
would.
I still be here. But your thoughts on tight end university and what they've been able to do so far this season.
Even Andy coming in saying that this is one of the most talented tight end groups that he's had. Even you know, with the tight end that they're the injured tight end that they're
Blake
missing,
Bell,
Blake Bell. Yeah. So I think the tight end look, when you put all three tight ends out there, it's like we talk about the wide receiver, pick your poison. You have a 6'6" guy that can run and jump that used to be a wide receiver that's just now becoming acclimated as being a tight end in Jody Fortson. You still have one of the all-time greatest tight ends ever to play the game in Travis Kelce.
still out there balling.
Yeah, and then you have a young guy too. So you can't possibly guard all of them. You just can't because tight ends are bigger than your normal defensive back and they're tough to guard. A lot of guys don't have the speed, but then not only that, Travis Kelce always has good games against the Los Angeles, or not even Los Angeles Raiders, but the Las Vegas Raiders. So
I need that tonight, Kelsey.
I mean,
72 yards, touchdown.
He always has at least 100 yards against the Raiders. At least the past few games he has. So I think Travis Kelce's going to have a great game tonight.
Steve, I appreciate you speaking that into existence. Now let's make sure
Got you. Yeah.
Because if everything worked out, well, look, let them win, let them cover my parlay tonight. Oh, we eating well this week. It's so crazy, man, when I think about it. So look, I want to change it just a little bit because looking at some of the games that we saw yesterday again. One of the reasons why I think Kansas City wins this game, I don't care whether they win or not. I just want them to win. But you know what that matchup is going to do because it's going to be built up between that game and the night game. It's going to be built up all week leading into the game. And if you're Kansas City, if they win tonight, they move right now. They're second behind Buffalo, but if they win, they'll actually jump Buffalo and be at the top of the conference. So this particular game on Sunday, if Kansas City wins tonight, will be for the lead. And of course that's where you angle for home field advantage. So you're already starting to think about that right now. And look, everybody's already saying that Buffalo is the Super Bowl favorite and stuff like that. And Kansas City's like, I mean, did you not forget what we did to them the last couple of seasons? And we've had the AFC Championship game at our home the last 4 years. Do you think we're just going to lie down and give it up?
Short memory, man. I'm telling you, it's like what they feel like is hot. And a lot of times when you do that, you're either it's kind of good cop, bad cop, right? Some guys are gonna be like, oh, well, I'm going with who's hot right now. Josh Allen, he's the new hottest thing. Well, no, Patrick Mahomes is like, here, hold my beer, and I'm gonna come out and do what I need to do.
I do want to ask you though, seeing what we saw yesterday, is there any team out there? Not to say that could beat Kansas City if the playoff came, but is there a team? Because I saw one team that I was like, Kansas City played them in the Super Bowl with that particular defense. Could be some trouble. Mm-hmm. Could be a nice matchup. Could be a high scoring affair. Could be a nice little chess match between Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy and the Cowboys defensive coordinator. I can't think of his name just eludes me right quick. Doggone it, really just slipped my mind. But is there a team? Because for me, it's the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, I saw the way, and maybe just Micah Parsons and the way he just jumps off on the screen. Yeah. But it's like when he plays, you saw D-Law. I mean, they had 5 sacks in the game. That type of stuff, as a former defensive guy, I mean, that stuff just gets at me. And so when you see that, are there any other teams right now that you see that would cause Kansas, and let's just speak with the AFC, I guess, cause them fits besides possibly Buffalo in the playoffs?
If you're sticking with AFC, the team that jumps off the page right now for me would be the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, even though, with coaching last week, lost them that game. Yeah. But I think just from the offensive side of the ball, they're playing very well. Lamar Jackson, he bet on himself this year, and right now he's winning the bet. So I think defensively, they still have some mega stars on that team. Yeah. Sometimes, it just doesn't go your way. But I feel like right now they would probably give the Chiefs the most problems, even more than Buffalo.
I am going to go with Buffalo. I mean, I've watched all the games on when they play. I do like what Von Miller brings to them because I know the Chiefs. Because again, we've seen what Orlando Brown has been doing the last 2, 3, 4 weeks, and it hasn't been good. They've been able to push him, knock him down, get Patrick. That for someone who's bet on themselves, to me, in my opinion, he's not looking too good in those contract negotiations. So when you look at that, I think because of what Von Miller, with his skill set, knowing he's won 2 Super Bowls, former Defensive Player of the Year, I know what he can do and cause trouble, and other players on that defense can feed off of it.
And another guy too that I look at when I think about the Baltimore Ravens is Marcus Peters. He's a guy who every time his team has played this Chiefs team, he always plays well. Always. If you look back from, he was injured last year, so
Yeah.
we can kind of take that one out. But even when you look back at when he was with the Rams, he's always had a great game and kind of giving Patrick Mahomes trouble. So I mean, that's another guy you think about.
That is true. That is
Patrick
true.
Queen, all those guys out there in Baltimore. So I mean, that's the reason why I say that would be my team.
This is the pregame cheat sheet. Darren Smith along with Steve Walls here inside the press box at Arrowhead Stadium, getting you set for the Monday night kickoff between the Las Vegas Raiders and your Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, after this game, of course, Steve and I will bring you the post-game presser on our respective channels. And then, of course, we'll get some locker room interviews as well as do a post-game show from the field after the game. Steve, let's look at the head coaching or the coaching. You got Andy Reid. Not too much you can say about him. I think he has, and it's funny because there is a maturation period, and obviously he went through a long growing pain dealing with the clock management, even in Kansas City, but dealing with clock management and what he was going through in Philadelphia. I think right now, since I believe since he's gotten Patrick Mahomes, he's never really had to worry about the whole clock management stuff because they've always been able to go for it and stuff like that. So versus when he had Alex and everyone else. But you look at Andy and what he's been able to do here, mold these players, Breadvies to an extent, getting the right players, putting the pieces in place. What is it going to take for someone like a Josh McDaniels, who had learned from, the GOAT himself and Bill Belichick, that's going to help him try to be successful in Las Vegas?
Sometimes I think, when you have trouble at the head coaching, spot.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can kind of linger, especially what the Raiders went through last year, where their head coach was involved in some mess, had to be removed in the middle of the season, and they had some other things happening. But just looking at the head coach from the head coach perspective, filling that void is always a tough task. I think, when Andy Reid first came into the Chiefs with the Chiefs organization, he was filling a void of, all right, do you guys remember the 2-14 season?
Yeah.
The season before Andy Reid came in 2013. And it took him a little while to be able to win the city over, to be able to win his team over, ownership, all that. And even though, he is a Hall of Fame coach coming from the Eagles and all the success that he's had, minus the Super Bowls in Philadelphia. So I think it's still going to take, Josh McDaniels a little while with the Raiders just to be able to figure out, okay, this is my team. This is what guys are expecting from me. This is what I'm expecting from players. Because right now you can call out any number on this Chiefs offense and they'll run through a wall for Andy Reid.
Yeah.
Will the Raiders do that for Josh McDaniels? That's how you know a good coach. When your players, no matter wins or losses, will they run through a wall for you? And I think it's going to take a little bit of time for his team to be able to do that.
Let's give credit where credit's due, Steve. 2 weeks ago, they had some serious problems on special teams. Special teams was one of the many reasons why they lost that game against Indianapolis. Yeah. But last week, I think I can't remember any snafus or anything on special teams with the Chiefs. Obviously, tonight's game I think is still going to be important. It's always important. Special teams in this instance. Dave Tobin, his group, Sky Moore, Pacheco doing the returns. What are you expecting from them tonight?
It's growing pains. Dave Tobe talked about it. You don't expect the game to go like it did in Indianapolis, right?
Yeah.
But you expect something. You expect something. He's not gonna. I mean, rookies coming out there, especially with Scott Moore, punt is the toughest thing that you can do besides playing quarterback on an NFL football field, right? So I think that is kind of one of those things. It's like, all right, we're expecting to make a mistake. We don't expect it to lead, a domino effect to cause us to lose the game.
Yeah.
But we expect them to make that mistake. It wasn't in a crucial part of the game. It was early on.
At the beginning.
So we don't expect, it to go that way. Sometimes just chips don't fall your way. But Isaiah Pacheco, I think he's this close to breaking one. He really is. If you just look at the fact not only as being a running back, but just being that kickoff return guy, every time he gets close, he's jumping up and down, slapping the ball like, man, I just need my opportunity. And those young guys, they're gaining the confidence that they need.
One of the things that I've liked about this team this year that I'm not saying a lot of people don't talk about, but the defense has gotten much better. And I've gotten younger, but it may not show up in the stats, but you can just tell throughout the game that they'll make a big play. And, and granted, they've been on the road a lot, but even on the road, Chiefs Kingdom has been traveling. So we got to get credit where credit's due on that. Shout out to Chiefs Kingdom because y'all making sure that y'all showing up when they need you to.
And when we need you to, when you're watching the show.
Facts. But the Chiefs defense, I think, we talk about L'Jarius Sneed. He actually leads the team in sacks, which is saying something from a defensive back position. But Chris Jones, Frank Clark, I think these players are getting they're dialing up the pressure, and it may not always turn out into sacks, but you are forcing the quarterback. You're getting tackles for loss, or you're forcing the quarterback into throwing an interception, something like that, or a pick six, so to speak. I mean. Knowing that we're playing the Raiders, and knowing it's Derek Carr, and he's going to take chances because he just can't help himself because he's going up against Patrick. Yeah. What do you think Spags can do to trick or hide or put some kind of blanket out there that's gonna force other Raiders into some type of turnover?
I don't think L'Jarius Sneed's gonna be able to sneak up on anybody anymore. It's on film. They know what to look for. Especially Derek Carr is gonna know what side of the ball he's on. What down it is specifically. They typically do it on third down. So that the pressure's coming from somewhere, but you just don't know where. And I think now you're going to be able to call it out when L'Jarius Sneed is on that, whether it's the right side or the left side, depending on who he's guarding. And I think that back end, though, with Justin Reed, Juan Thornhill, those guys have been playing very solid. And I don't know if it's credit to the defensive ends, Frank Clark, even the young guy, right? George Karlaftis. I think it's all just kind of working together, and sometimes you just can't put your finger on it. What that reason is that it's working well. There's no experiment process this year with Chris Jones, but we see the outside. He's playing his rightful position.
And Carlos Dunlap has played well as well.
And he has. So I think even when they throw all four of those guys down front, they've done it. Spags has done it a lot, and I think we're going to see it. Sometimes you get a veteran quarterback out there where, as Derek Carr, there's not going to be much that you're going to be able to do to kind of fool him, So it's going to be Spags trying to be able to dial up some things, and the players, when he dials it up, being able to make it happen.
We've got the Raiders, we've got the Chiefs, sold out crowd tonight at Arrowhead Stadium. Probably 77,000 people. It's going to be loud. It's going to be rocking.
I'm upset that they don't have rally ties today. I'm kind of upset about that.
You know what? I'm just upset that we can't open up these windows. This is an older stadium to where, if we were in Los Angeles, we'd be sitting in the open air and stuff like that. That's what, that's what because I think when we were in Detroit the year they won the Super Bowl, we were just
dome now.
No. It was a dome, but I'm saying, but we were still where our seats were. Yeah. It wasn't enclosed. That's what I'm saying. This and the Raiders, and it's not enclosed. So I like it to where we can get the crowd and that feeling, especially when doing pregame and stuff.
Clark didn't want to make that investment. 3 games out of the season, you're gonna be having windows open. The other 14 games, it's gonna be closed with the heat on. So.
That's football. But you know what though? This is what the people are waiting for right now, Steve. Come time to decision. Chiefs are a 7-point favorite. Who you got in this game? What's the score and why?
It's not a tough one, but I think I have Kansas City as most folks do. And the Raiders, and I've been saying this when you're better than your opponent on paper, your good teams, not only good teams but great teams, show you why they're better on paper. As far as from coaching all the way down, I think just you look at every position. That's what it comes out to being. Is from position number 1 to number 53. Are they better at each position? And I feel like they are. So I think
the only position that the Raiders are better is actually one spot, and that's at wide receiver.
I would say collectively. Collectively
as a group, yes, Kansas City. But individually, they have the best wide receiver, period.
No doubt. Yeah,
I wish somehow that Kansas City could have made a play for the if we knew he was up for grabs like that. I would have. If Kansas City had gotten Devontae Adams, Chiefs would walk back to Super Bowl seriously. Just Devontae Adams is that dude.
I mean, I get it. I get it. Tyreek Hill was that dude.
Yes.
So I mean, you still had a question at running game. You still had a question at defense. So I mean, you would have to answer those questions. And I think the money that Devontae Adams wanted or wants was the money that you could have given to Tyreek Hill and still had a guy who knows your offense, who knows your quarterback. And so, I mean, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. But collectively, I think this wide receiver group is good. Now, individually, yes, the Raiders have a better wide receiver, but from 1 to 53, I think the Chiefs have a much better roster, which in turn should lead to a win. Like I said, if you're a better team on paper, great teams beat the teams that are better than on paper.
So, what's your score? It's funny because we give our scores at the red out and then we forget.
I would say right now, just looking at today, I would say.
Do they cover, in your opinion?
Yeah, they're going to beat them by a touchdown. I think they'll beat them by 8. I think they'll beat them by 8. But if I had to give a score, I would say, 31-24.
I'll take 31. I need them to at least get 31.
31-24.
Yeah, we need 31.
I just think the Chiefs going to come out here and be electric. Now, the thing about it, too, is the fact, will they score first? Will they be able to put the Raiders on their heels, so to speak? Because if you do, then Derek Carr comes out and kind of intends to be a little uncharacteristic, right? By going away from the running game, trying to, force passes, trying to hit Devontae Adams. Now, can the Chiefs stop Devontae Adams and that Derek Carr? Plus the Hunter Renfrow, plus the mixture of Darren Waller, all those guys. You're gonna look. I think had the Raiders still had Henry Ruggs, we'd be having a much different, because that dynamic of Henry Ruggs and Devontae Adams, they would have had the best wide receiver group.
I would agree.
In the league.
Because you had the speed, because you had that outside speed just like Tyreek.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I have the Raiders. Just stop the run, get up early, make them have to throw the ball, and try to figure things out.
I do believe it is essential for Kansas City to get on the board. If not, if you can get them 3 and out, Kansas City has to turn around and score. Oh, yeah. Make them play from high so you can get them out the running. Because if you allow the game to stay close, where Josh Jacobs could be a factor, that is not going to turn out well for Kansas City. Yeah. I do think Kansas City wins this game. I think I got them winning 40-24. I think it's a high scoring game. I think I just think that at the end of the day, I think being at home. Yeah. The crowd noise, everything. I think that's going to be a factor, and I think it's going to help Kansas City. And I do think the defense can make a big play. I think they'll make 1 or 2 plays.
Do you double Devontae Adams, or do you just play straight up or play zone?
I'd say you play single until he proves that he can, which he will essentially get you. But you here's the thing. If the Chiefs can get a lead and maintain it, especially like they did against Tampa Bay, you get a 2-touchdown lead, then you can, I say play it too high, or at least you can kind of double them, because you want to take the running game out. If you take the running game out where they have to pass, then you can kind of focus on, okay, we're not going to let Devontae Adams. It might be Darren Waller, it might be Hunter Renfrow, but it's not going to be Adams. Yeah. Now,
sometimes that next guy can beat you.
True that. Now, I'll let Devontae Adams get 80 yards. But that's about it.
Yeah,
and a touchdown.
And that's about it. The good thing about it too is the Chiefs defense has been having that bend but don't break attitude, and they've done it well this far this season. Yeah.
All right. Before we get out of here, again, post game, follow Steve and I. We'll be bringing you the post game presser next Sunday. We'll start our pregame show at 2:00. 2:00 Central, where we kick you off with the pregame cheat sheet as the Chiefs take on the Buffalo Bills. But before we go, as always, we want to thank our sponsors, Gates Barbecue. And as always,
it's right here. You guys can see it, but it's right here.
Oh, no. I have no problem showing you right here. You know what I'm saying? They always make sure we are well fed compared to what they have here at the press box. Gates always take care of us.
Still got about 20 minutes to go and grab you some Gates. I know.
Or just go eat at Gates. Just go and eat there.
Watch the game there.
But Steve, man, you got the money green working. I mean, who took care of you tonight?
My friends over at Dillard's on the road, so you can go see Heather, go see Jeff. no matter if you're male, female, they'll take care of you out there. Of course, they have a huge women's section, kids, men's section.
Because
So
Maya got some stuff from out
it
there
is for her,
homecoming.
for homecoming. Like it's homecoming season right now. So if your kids are needing that, that last minute fit for, or even if they're planning, go grab that homecoming fit as well.
And of course, as always, I want to thank Todd White and Todd's Clothiers and Taylor Suits for styling me, making sure I look good for each and every game, home and on the road. I gave Patrick a couple of weeks off till we get back on the road to San Francisco. I'm going to get him again. I'm up 2-1 on Patrick. That's per Patrick Mahomes. But as always, really, we appreciate you all's support. And if nothing else, again, hit us up on social media at Steve Walls KC across all the platforms, at Darren Smith WHB across the platforms as well. For Steve Walls, I'm Darren Smith. We want to thank you so much for the pregame cheat sheet for joining us tonight. We'll see you post-game, and we'll see you next Sunday.